She screamed as the boathouse started drifting away. At first, it was just a faint sound I heard from across the shore, but the panic in her voice quickly grew louder and more desperate. I leaned back in my old rocking chair, sipping sweet tea, on the porch of my lakeside home, watching the chaos unfold with a quiet satisfaction. Let me backtrack a bit. My name's Jack Rowley. I'm a retired marine engineer who moved out to this peaceful lake community to get away from all the noise and nonsense of the city. I bought a quiet property with a little boathouse sitting at the edge of the lake, perfect for my weekend fishing trips and an occasional nap away from the world. The neighbors were decent folk, mostly retirees and small families. Things were calm, just the way I liked it. Then she showed up. Her name was Karen Beaumont, the HOA president from a nearby subdivision that had just expanded. Their developers had built fancy homes with lake views, and in their infinite wisdom, they had decided to merge our quiet lakeside community into their new HOA. Suddenly, a board of people I'd never met before had authority over me and my land, or so they thought. Now, I don't take well to people telling me what to do on my own property, especially not some woman with an oversized sun hat and a clipboard barking orders like a drill sergeant. Karen believed she ran the entire lake. She didn't like the way I parked my old pickup, said it was unsightly. She didn't like my wooden mailbox because it wasn't uniform. And she really didn't like my boathouse. To her, it was underutilized space. I had built it myself years ago. Solid frame, floating dock, the whole deal. It was a peaceful little spot with a hammock inside, a few fishing rods, and a cooler always ready to go. But to Karen, it was a viable lakeside structure that was, according to her, sitting idle and perfect for HOA-approved recreation. I laughed the first time she said that. I should have known she was serious. Last summer, I left for a 2-hiking trip in the Smoky Mountains. No phone service, no internet, just me and nature. When I returned, I found a kayak on my dock, a garden gnome sitting on my boathouse steps, and Karen's voice echoing from inside my boathouse. I thought I was losing my mind. She had moved in, literally. There were curtains on the windows. Her scented candles were lit on the windowsill. A yoga mat was rolled out next to my bait bucket. She had the nerve to put a folding table outside with a little bell labeled welcome. I stood there frozen. When she saw me, she didn't flinch. Jack, good to see you back. You really should update your reservation schedule. You haven't used this place in ages. So the HOA voted to reassign it temporarily. It's going to be the new wellness retreat for our lakefront members. I couldn't even find words. She acted like it was a timeshare and not my private property. I told her to get out immediately. She laughed. Jack, don't be silly. This structure is clearly on common lake property. The HOA reviewed the parcel maps. You'll need to file a grievance if you want to appeal. I told her again, get out. She calmly replied, you're escalating. I'll have to report you for aggressive behavior. I walked away that day, not because I gave up, but because I needed to think. I needed a plan. You don't spend 20 years engineering floating marine rigs and not learn a thing or two. That boathouse, it wasn't just sitting on wooden stilts. No, sir. It had been upgraded over the years on floating pontoons, anchored just enough to stay in place, but very capable of mobility if you knew what you were doing. And I did. So, I waited. I watched for 3 days. She threw little garden parties on the dock, yoga sessions at dawn, even hosted a wine and cheese evening for her way buddies. She walked around barefoot like she owned the place. Then came the morning. I parked my old John boat just around the bend at 4:30 a.m., well before sunrise. I brought my toolkit, some rope, and a few modifications I designed years ago for lake barge movement. It took me 45 minutes to unhook the anchors and modify the tether points. At 5:30 a.m., as the sun started to rise, I secured lines to the frame and slowly towed the entire boathouse into the middle of the lake. It was majestic, like a scene out of a movie. Mist rolled across the water and my boathouse, her makeshift kingdom, floated steadily away from shore. At 6:15 a.m., she woke up. I heard the screams echo across the water. She stormed out onto the dock in a robe, phone in hand, trying to figure out where she was. She dialed 911. I could hear her yelling, help, I've been kidnapped on a floating house. Within 30 minutes, 2 sheriff's boats, a news chopper, and a crowd of HOA members gathered on the shore watching the spectacle. The sheriff knew me. Sheriff Dan had fished with me plenty of times. He pulled up beside my boat and just shook his head, laughing. "Jack, what did you do?" I grinned, just reclaiming my property. Dan Karen was hysterical. She was pacing on the dock, demanding to be rescued, claiming I was a lunatic and had illegally moved a residential structure. The sheriff replied, "Ma'am, you're on private property. You broke into this man's boathouse and squatted here for nearly a week. He didn't touch you, didn't break any laws. Looks to me like he just relocated his own property." She snapped, "It's on the lake. That's public water." Dan calmly responded, "Actually, this section of the lake is privately owned by Jack here. He bought it outright a decade ago." "You didn't know?" Her jaw dropped. You could almost hear the gears turning in her head. I offered to tow her back. She refused, said she wouldn't set foot in my boat, so the sheriff had to call the fire department to send out a flat rescue boat to bring her back. It took another hour. By then, half the town had gathered, watching, laughing, recording with their phones. The cherry on top, I called the local surveyor and had official property signs installed around the boathouse and the portion of the lake it floated on. Private property, no trespassing. Karen tried to file charges, claimed emotional distress, theft, and psychological manipulation. It didn't go far. My property records were clear. My boathouse wasn't part of the HOA, and every camera on the lake had footage showing her entering and occupying it without permission. The HOA board, embarrassed and under pressure, voted to remove her as president. She still lives in the neighborhood, but she avoids eye contact every time she drives by. I even caught her turning her head the other way at the grocery store once. The boathouse. I kept it floating. Now it's anchored permanently in the center of the lake with solar lights around the edge, a comfy chair inside, and a little sign on the dock that says, "Members only membership 1." And every time I row out there, I can't help but smile, remembering the day Karen called 911 on herself because she squatted where she didn't belong. She thought she could bully her way into taking over my peace. Instead, she got a one-way ticket to the middle of the lake. Do subscribe to my channel.